So good morning. 5 reasons why recruiting A players is so difficult and 6 things you can do about it. Apologies if you had problems getting through on Eventbrite and Zoom this morning. So this is a recording that's going out to everybody who may have missed the live session this morning. Today we're going to be talking about 5 reasons why recruiting A players is so difficult and 6 things you can do about it. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Ian Kinnery. I'm a professional business coach. I'll keep the introduction brief. I've been using this photograph since I first started as a coach, and I first started delivering seminars and webinars 15 years ago. And this picture is really about why I'm a coach. In the picture you'll see me as I think an 8-year-old and my dad. And originally I thought that this picture illustrated the fact that I've been in and around businesses for a long time, which of course is absolutely true. But halfway through my second or my third use of this photograph, I realised that there was a much greater significance. And the significance is this, that what you're looking at is the only picture in existence of me and my dad. Now, my dad died when I was 14-year-old. So that means that in 14 years of life, there is only one photograph of me and my dad. Today, that's almost inconceivable. And when I thought about why that would be, it became fairly obvious. You see, as I was growing up, my dad was like many of my current clients. He was a businessman trying to grow his business. So on an evening when I'd finished playing out and my mum put me to bed, the chances were that my dad hadn't yet come home. He was probably out still trying to grow his business, and on a morning when she woke me up and kicked me out for school, the chances were my dad had already left to go and build his business. I don't recall having breakfast more than half a dozen times with my dad. And on a weekend when as kids we were playing with our mates, where was my dad? Well, he was trying to grow his business. So when I think about it, it really is no surprise that there is only one photograph of me and my dad. As a business coach, I work with business owners and business leaders fundamentally on 3 things: time, team, and money. Now, money may not be the main reason that you went into business. It's different for everybody. But one thing I do know is that money is what allows us to stay in business. So if I can show business owners and business leaders how to get better financial results in a shorter time, that to me is a job well done. Team, and team's what today's all about. I'll show you how to recruit, how to train, how to lead, how to inspire a winning team to work in your business so that you don't have to. But time, absolutely, time is our scarcest resource, our most precious asset. We will not have today again. So again, if I can show people how to get better financial results with less stress in a shorter time, that's really what I'm all about. A lot of water's passed under the bridge. I spent probably 30 years owning and running businesses up and down the country before I became a coach 15 years ago. I'm now one of only 4 or 5 certified scaling up coaches across the UK, and I'm also a Gallup certified strengths coach. About 2 years ago now, I released my first book, Tuesday at 12, and that's based, it's fictionalized, it's a fable, but it is based on a true story of transforming a local northeast business through one of the things that I coach on, which is the regular weekly management meeting. So let's get down to the subject at hand. 5 reasons why recruiting A players is so difficult and the 6 things you can do about it. My objectives for today are as follows. Vern Harnish, author of Scaling Up, ran a poll recently, and of the 4 decisions, people, strategy, execution and cash, people came out as the number one concern for most business owners. A short while ago, we ran a similar but smaller survey of our clients and contacts. And again, people came out as their number one concern. How to hire them, how to recruit them, how to develop them, how to lead them. So hopefully today I can give you some pointers on how to be more successful at that. I also run the Scale Up Leaders Academy for the Entrepreneurs Forum up here in the Northeast. And I think next year will be the 6th year that we've done that. It's been remarkably successful. But the constant feedback that I'm getting goes something like this. Ian, it was in that people session when you explained what an A player was that I realised I didn't have the right people on the bus. I didn't have enough A players on my team. And the minute I focused on that is when my business started to change. I hear that so often. And the scale ups that I'm coaching individually, the experience that I've had with all of them, particularly recently, is that when they've paid attention to increasing the number of A players, getting the right people in the right seats doing the right things right, that has been the most transformational thing for them. And just in the last few months, I've had several clients work really hard on upgrading their recruitment processes. And it was in the light of that that I decided to run this webinar today for everybody on recruiting A players. So the rules of the game for today, this will be recorded. You're watching this recording now. Feel free to ask questions via the chat box and interrupt. That's not going to happen because this is a recording that you're watching. But if you have a question, just email me or call me, even if it's a recording that you're watching, and you probably will have questions. So I'll give you my contact details in just a minute. The slide deck will also be available, and we'll get that out to you if you want it when you ask for it. I'm going to be referring to some other authorities. If you need any references or resources, again, please just contact me. And what you've got on the screen there are my contact details. The website, www.kinnery.co.uk, ian@kinnery.co.uk will be the best email address to get me on. And if you'd rather do it by phone, 07801 96 83 83. Why am I doing this now? Why? I've been a coach for 15 years. I've never done a webinar on recruitment or selection. Why now? Well, here we are. We're still in lockdown. We're 7 or 8 months into COVID-19, and now is a great time to recruit and to revisit your hiring and retaining policies. Many businesses have laid people off, and many other businesses are taking advantage of that talent that's now available in the marketplace. And if you're in a position to do that, why would you not? So now is a great time to recruit. Also, I think business has changed. Years ago, Peter Drucker introduced the concept of knowledge workers as opposed to manual workers. And it strikes me that now, with business getting so complicated, more and more of the people that work for you, even if you've only got a very small team, are actually knowledge workers. And the thing about a knowledge worker is that they probably know more about their job than you do. So the way we need to recruit, develop, and lead those people is very different to what it was, and I'll say more about that later. And as a consequence of all of that, The business landscape is changing ever and ever faster. We can no longer afford to carry passengers if we ever could. And the individual roles that people play are much more specialized than ever they were. So if you haven't looked at your recruiting and hiring and retaining policies, now is definitely the time to do it. So let's start by talking about what is an A player. It's a term that we use. It's a term that I use a lot. Let me try and define it more closely for you. And the simplest definition I can give you is on this slide. And on the horizontal axis, we measure performance. On the vertical axis, we measure core values. For the moment, just think of that as the degree to which the candidate or the employee gets your company. So an A player is somebody who consistently performs well and who consistently behaves in the way that you would expect your star performers to behave. In contrast, a C player is somebody who doesn't perform well and who doesn't behave the way you would expect them to. Now, I'm not going to talk an awful lot about C players, but you've got to be able to exit C players. You'll never build a growing company on C players. People that don't yet perform but really get who you are, they're probably a B player. And your job is to turn them into an A player. They may be in the wrong job or they may be working for the wrong person, but they're potential A players. The thing that normally shocks people is the next category. They are people who perform well but don't live your core values. And they're also C players. We need to exit C players. If you want to know more about why, talk to me. But these people are the terrorists within the organization, and you can't let them persist. So an A player, very simply, are high performers who fit your culture and values. That's it in its simplest format. But A players are by definition smart both in intellect and business savvy, driven to succeed, trustworthy, consistent high performers. They're adaptable. They're surrounded by other high performers. A players attract A players, and A players want to work with A players. They're hard workers, they're resourceful, they're effective leaders, they're down to earth, well grounded. They fit your core values and culture. And this is the key requirement. Someone you would enthusiastically rehire. So apply the keeper test. Imagine somebody in your business were to come to you this afternoon and say they were leaving to go to another job. The degree to which you would fight to keep them is the degree to which they're an A player. So, A players, highly important. Typically, we can achieve more with 6 A players than we can with 10 mediocre B or C players. And as we start a business, we tend to employ anybody with a pulse. And one of the frustrations comes is as the business grows, we realize that we don't have the right people in the right seats. In fact, Jack Welch, the legendary CEO of GE, made this statement. He said, fewer people paid more gives a lower overall wage cost. Now let's be clear, what he wasn't saying was pay people more and you'll get better results, because that's patently not true. That patently doesn't work. But what he is saying, which is counterintuitive to most small businesses, is pay the absolute most you can afford to get the very best people you can afford. That way you'll probably need less of them, and therefore your wage cost overall will be lower. So let's take a look at how we currently recruit. And generally, it's not good. I would argue, and I may be exaggerating to make the point, but if the cap fits, wear it, we probably don't have a well thought through recruitment process. I've been coaching for 15 years and I haven't met one business that does have a well thought through recruitment process. Therefore, we do what we've always done. We recruit probably in the way that we were recruited, which might well have been adequate in a bygone age, but isn't now. You know, once upon a time, when most workers were manual workers, bluntly, they were interchangeable. They were really machines in human form. They didn't need to think. In fact, it was probably better that these people in the photograph didn't think. Because if they did think, would they really choose to go 2 miles underground and hew coal in an 18-inch scene that could collapse at any minute? But if you think about it, whatever recruitment process you've got was probably adequate for this scenario, but not for the current scenario. So I said 5 reasons why recruiting A players is so difficult. Let's just have a look at why we make it so difficult. And I would argue that first and foremost, we start off, we don't have a clue what we're looking for. We don't stop and do the hard thinking work before we embark on recruiting. And if we don't know what we're looking for, we're not likely to find it. We use bland terms like secretary, salesman. We haven't thought about exactly who we want and what sort of qualities that person might need. So we go out totally unprepared and we write an advert. And we write an advert in the same way as we write most adverts. We're looking for absolutely the biggest response that we can get. So we dress it up. It's a meaningless advert. It displays our business literally as a holiday camp. And if that's not bad enough, we go out onto Stupid Street with that advert, inviting everybody to come in. And effectively what we're saying is, look, we don't know what we're looking for, but hey, come on in. It's brilliant here. We'd love to see you. So however many applicants we get, and this isn't guaranteed to get you hundreds of applicants, but you're going to get too many. 99 times out of 100, you're only looking to recruit one person. But of course, you don't have any filters. So now you've got a desk full of applications. Where do you go from here? Because we don't have any filters or any sophisticated enough filters, because remember, we didn't know what we were looking for in the first place, then we try and filter out through the interview process, which means that we're going to interview far too many people. And quite frankly, for most of us, our interview process is nothing if not naive. We don't know what we're looking for. We've got too many people to interview. We tend to do them all in a couple of days. By interview number 4, we can't remember what candidate number 1 was like. We don't have a system for interviewing, and we ask banal, trivial questions that don't throw any light on the capabilities of the person. But eventually we might offer somebody the job, and we haven't finished compounding the felony at that. And typically what happens is we get our new recruit. Our new recruit on the night before or the day before she's due to start work, she's extremely nervous, she's extremely pent up, she's really looking forward to her job. She's got 2 sets of work clothes pressed and ironed ready at 4 o'clock. She has a quiet night, she doesn't open a bottle of wine, she has a light meal, gets an early night because she wants to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, well-dressed and enthusiastic for our first day on the job. But then, within 60 or 90 days, we've trained her. So 90 days in, on the Sunday night, she's out for dinner with friends. She's had her first bottle of wine. She thinks, I'll just open the second bottle of wine. It doesn't matter. She wakes up the next morning, far from bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, to go into work either on the stroke of starting time or a little bit later. And before you know it, we've managed to train her in those first 60 or 90 days to be no better than the rest of us. So all of that enthusiasm with which we started recruiting is gone. And suddenly we're back to square one. We've got somebody else that isn't an A player. She might have wanted to be an A player when she came on board, but within 90 days, we've trained her in the mediocrity of our company. And that typically is why we find recruiting A players so difficult. So let's have a look at 6 things that you can do about it. Now, this isn't meant to be definitive. It's not meant to be terribly detailed. I don't have time to go into detail, but if you want more details, you know how to contact me. So the very first thing, the number 1 phrase in my coaching business is clarity is power. What is it we're looking for? Before we start recruiting, let's be clear what it is we're looking for. In simple terms, what is the job? What are you looking for? And it's now time to create a job scorecard. Without a job scorecard, you don't know what you're looking for. A job scorecard will detail what are the outcomes from this job. When this person's been in post 12 months, how will I know, how will they know whether they're doing a good job? What are the results I'm looking for? What competencies does this job require? Now, I'm using competencies, and I've put it in inverted commas because that's the language used in the book Top Grading that I'm going to refer to in a minute. But it's really about what are the attributes for this person. We're going to look at some competencies in a minute, but this is fundamentally vital. And what will make this person be a cultural fit? If we don't know the answers to that, we've got precious little chance of getting the right person. This is an extract from a job scorecard, and it may not be perfect, and it's certainly not detailed enough, but notice the specificity. The purpose of this job is to increase gross profit from 1.5 million to 1.8 million in this coming financial year. And 5 specific measurements. The number 1 is going to be gross margin. The job holder is responsible, is accountable for achieving a gross margin of 55%. You'll notice that 3 of the other 4 measures relate to the people that this person will be responsible for. The major role of any leader is to develop the people beneath them. So the job scorecard should reflect that. That's the kind of specificity, that's the kind of detail that you need before you start recruiting. And you're going to share this with the candidate because this is what they're signing up for. And core values. Does the candidate demonstrate that she would be a fit with our core values? Now, if you're a business that knows and has defined its core values, and that's something that I work with most businesses to do very early on, then this is easy for you. If you haven't defined your core values, it's going to be kind of difficult for you to understand whether anybody else fits with them. And competencies. I've got a list of 50 competencies that I pinched from somewhere that you're more than welcome to have. But what I've put on the left hand side here are potentially 5 competencies that you absolutely have decided that the right candidate has to have. Things like resourcefulness, a passion for excellence. If it's a manager, are they capable of managing other people's performance? Are they intelligent enough, and can they speak fluently enough? And I'm not talking about accents here. Can they communicate by word of mouth? And the one that I added on the bottom there, I think is essential. Willing and able to grow. If you're a scale-up or a growth company, the chances are that if you are, in 12 months' time, the job, whatever job you're employing for, won't be the same in 12 months as it is now. If you manage to select somebody that's absolutely perfect for today, and you're growing, and they aren't willing and able to grow, they're going to be a B player or a C player by this time next year. I think that has to be a must on anybody's list of competencies if they want to grow their business. But you've got to know with absolute specificity what you're looking for. And then going out to advertise. Now, you know, there may be some merit in putting a really attractive advert out, in displaying yourself as an attractive place for your holiday, to work. But think about it, that's not the only way. The danger is with that type of advert is that you're going to get more applications than you can use or successfully sift through. So just think about this for a minute as an alternative. I've tried it before, and what you're going to see absolutely works. I call it a provocative advert. Now, in this particular case, the job that we were recruiting for, we knew what we were looking for. We knew because of the situation of the business that we probably wouldn't get an established A player. So we made a strategic decision to, one, attract a really good number 2 that was ready to step up, and I'll let you read the advert as I'm talking. And also, and this is part of it, that we'd hack off, we would frighten away all those other people that are just applicants, you know, the ones that are on the merry-go-round that will work in place A for 6 months and place B for 9 months. And if you think about it, that second paragraph, you will be described as ambitious, a go-getter, and often outspoken in your opinions and drive. You'll be a natural leader. That is going to frighten off a number of people. And that's okay, because what it's going to do is appeal to the very person that you're looking for and scare the people that you're definitely not looking for. And this isn't a new technique. Over 110 years ago, when Shackleton was looking for people to go to the pole, this was the advert that he put out in, I think it was the London Times. Provocative adverts have a place. However you do it, the second thing is that you need to then embark on a process of filters and deselection. However many applications you've got, the next job is to filter out or allow people to deselect themselves if this job isn't suitable. Fundamentally, you want someone who wants to work for you. Somebody that doesn't want to work for you isn't your A player. Your number one task is to get the best person for the job and the business. So think about it. What about a screening phone call or phone calls to whittle down that list? And you can do that on technical ability. That's probably the easiest thing to do. You can do that on cultural fit. You can do that on desire, the desire that they have to work for you. I like to create some hoops to jump through. So within the process, often making the interview times or the interview location difficult. Years ago, clients used to use my office because in those days it wasn't on a bus route. So if people wanted to get to the interview, they had to put in a bit of effort. If they didn't make it to the interview, fine, they've deselected themselves. Not difficult. Somebody suggested this to me recently. Ask clients to do a 2-minute video to introduce themselves. Now, if somebody really wants the job, people of any age can do a 2-minute video. You can do it on your phone. It just takes a little bit of thought, maybe a little bit of research, but ask them to jump through a hoop. If they don't want to do it, how badly do they want the job? If they don't want the job, do you want them? And the other one that works is a group interview. For the right job, I'm a fan of the group interview because it allows you to compare people. The times I've done this, it becomes very obvious who the tall poppy is, who the best candidate is. There are limits to a group interview, but there are advantages. So you might want to put that in the mix. But give people hoops to jump through. And then we come to the interview itself. We've narrowed down, people have jumped through hoops, they've met our selection criteria. You're only going to interview people who stand a very, very good chance of getting the job. And I've called this top grading interviews. I'm going to explain what top grading is in a minute. But the major problem with interviews is that we're particularly naive when it comes to interviewing. And we're particularly naive when it comes to recruiting. I mean, the fact of the matter is that people lie on their resumes. They're encouraged to lie. They're encouraged to polish things up, to omit stuff. We've got to be better than that. We can't accept what people say and expect to get top performers. And the irony is that A players are more likely to be truthful, whereas the rest are likely to be better liars. We've got to be better than that. So the top grading interviews it comes from this book written by Brad Smart. A bit of background: Brad Smart developed top grading as a way for GE to recruit the very best talent. As a methodology, it's 20 to 30 year old. And actually, the thing I hate about this book more than anything is the photograph, which looks like a 1960s Grattan catalogue. But the contents are brilliant and the methodology is absolutely excellent. I'm not going to go into top grading in a whole lot of detail today, but I do recommend you to find out about it. Or ring me up and I'll give you a more detailed discussion on it. Top grading interviews are detailed. They're very detailed and structured. You can have a script. You go through a rigorous process that is chronological, starting with the candidate at college, because you really want to know and understand this person in some depth. And you can't do that in a half hour, 1 hour, or even a 2-hour interview. One of the things that you'll read in the book Top Grading is what they refer to as the truth serum, otherwise referred to as TORC. And TORC stands for the threat of reference check. Now, throughout the whole process, you make it absolutely clear to the candidate that you are going to speak to previous employers. When you go through the interview process, you're asking about previous employers. You're asking about their names. You're asking about what would they have said to you? What did they think were your strengths? What did they think were your weak points? What did they think about your performance? And the candidate knows that you're going to speak to some of those previous employers. So they know that they can't snow you. They know that they can't spoof you. That's why they refer to threat of reference check as a truth serum. And when I say reference check, let's be clear, I'm not talking about the usual crappy reference check that we seem to have declined to here in the UK. I had one the other week, and all it said was, and it was on a questionnaire, and it was just a couple of questions. Did such and such work for you from October 2017 to July 2018, and how was their timekeeping? Well, quite frankly, it wasn't worth the stamp in sending it. You're not going to get any information from that. But the reference check that I'm talking about, first and foremost, is going to be arranged by the candidate. They know that. And it will be on the telephone or Zoom. And you, as the employing manager, will be talking to a previous manager about the candidate's performance and behaviour and comparing it with what the candidate said his or her performance or behaviour was as estimated by their manager. Extremely powerful. And I suggest that if you are, like I did, still doing interviews and not taking references, that you stop doing that straight away. Apologies for the graphics on here, but I wanted to visually depict the kind of information that you're looking to get from a well-conducted top grading interview. And with this candidate, you may not be able to see it quite clearly enough, but for the last, 20 years, you can see this particular candidate has had a career that's progressed. He or she's only had 2 employers. They've been promoted throughout. And since for the last 15, 16 years, they've been with the same employer. Compare and contrast this to the same information for a different candidate. Now, earning the same amount of money, but you'll be able to see how many jobs this individual's had, how often they've changed job. You can see, because it's portrayed graphically, the gaps in employment. And if I bothered to explain the key, this individual person has been dismissed from the last 3 jobs and terminated for the ones before that. Now, I would argue that armed with that information, you'd be able to make a far better decision between candidate A and candidate B than you would do now. This isn't a quick process, but it is rigorous. So then you're able to offer the job to somebody that you're pretty confident is going to be an A player. That allows you to take step 4, professional onboarding. Not like we saw it earlier, but this is different now. You both have the scorecard because, of course, you shared that with the candidate, probably at interview 1, if not before. So both you and he know what the outputs are from that position. Both you and he know how he's going to be measured, not only in 12 months' time, but every day between now and then. It's far more transparent. It's far more open. And more importantly than anything, the candidates signed up for it. So on day 1, you can start with the training and development plan. It's all about now progression. And you're going to be training and developing that person from day 1 so that at day 90, they haven't sunk to the lowest common denominator, as we saw earlier. It will allow you to have regular check-ins with that person to find out how they think they're tracking to being able to achieve the scorecard and beyond. And all of your conversations will start immediately and be about ongoing development. I've just had a client that's at this point now, and he says it's absolutely game changing. So from the very outset, you're having different conversations with your new recruit. That allows you to have continuous and ongoing development. In effect, you've brought an A player into a high performance environment. And even if this is your first A player, this is the environment that he thinks he's come into. You now need to deliver on that. And remember, A players also have high expectations. Now it's down to you to plan and achieve the development of that person. So not only is he or she an A player today, but continues to develop and become an even better A player. In fact, if they're an A player, they should be developing their own track, planning their own development track with you. Because again, A players want to get better. And that brings me on to the 6th thing that you can do about it. Build your bench. You see, one of the problems that we all have with recruiting is that it's a panic situation. We don't expect somebody to leave. So when they do, we're starting from scratch. Why would you do that? Every elite sports team has a bench. And I don't just mean that the substitute's about to go on the pitch. They've got 11-year-olds, 15-year-olds that they're developing. What are you doing to develop people that may join your team? You have to build a bench. As the saying goes, dig the well before you get thirsty, because if you're recruiting in a panic, if it's desperation stakes, you don't have the luxury of being able to make good decisions. So dig the well before you get thirsty. Never stop recruiting. You should always have the antenna out with your contacts, your networks, your competitors, to be spotting the best talent. The talent that could join you and help grow your company to ever greater heights. So, there we go. I said I'd talk about 5 reasons why recruiting A players is so difficult and 6 things you can do about it. It's not exhaustive, it's not detailed, but hopefully I've given you a picture of how badly we generally recruit at the moment and half a dozen things that you can do about it. Is it going to take effort? Absolutely it is. Is it going to take time? Yeah, absolutely it is. Most people spend 2 hours recruiting and 2 years regretting the choice. We've got to be better than that. We've got to have a process, and a process that works. What I've done is outlined a potential process. It's up to you whether you adopt any or all of that. But what I do is suggest is that you do have a process. And I'm going to quote Dr. W. Edwards Deming, who said, if you can't write down what you're doing as a process, then you plainly don't know what you're doing. Most businesses don't have a written, documented process for recruiting. Hopefully, you're in a position to write one now. Apologies if you had trouble getting through to the live webinar this morning. That's probably down to my technical inadequacy, but I do apologize. I hope you found this to be useful. Please feel free to contact me. My details are on the screen now. I'm going to be running another webinar, hopefully a live one this time, at the end of November, talking about some of the other stuff around recruiting, maybe going into how you source people, how you performance manage, because once you've got the scorecard, you've got the recipe for managing performance going forward. So I hope that's been useful. Apologies once again. My name's Ian Kinnery. Please contact me if there's anything else I can do to help. Hopefully see you at the end of November.